Hello, welcome back to another digital photo mentor. I forgot what I was going to say. Digital photo mentor portrait week edition. So today we're going to be talking about, if you could see the new fancy banner, we got 5 portrait photography myths busted. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you're just joining in, please put your comment as to where you're joining from in the chat, and let's get started. Myself, my name is Darlene. I am the creator and teacher at Digital Photo Mentor. We have a lovely community called Digital Photo Mentor Facebook group. If you want to come join us there, you can share your images, and lots of members share and give each other feedback. It's a really great little community. And of course, the website where I publish a new article roughly about once a week. So let's dig into today's topic, which is 5 portrait photography myths. I'm going to talk about why they're false and give you some of the correct answers for each. Okay, just a quick note, if you stick around to the end, I'm going to be telling you a little bit about our Portrait Fundamentals course that is launching tomorrow. It's very exciting. So I'll tell you about that at the end. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is myth number 1. I can't do portraits because the lighting is bad or the location is bad. Okay, so first of all, what is bad lighting? Is there even such a thing as bad lighting? Okay, personally, my belief is that there is no such thing as bad lighting. It has to do with whether or not the lighting is appropriate for the look that you want to achieve for your images. For example, most of the time, portrait photographers desire and want to use soft light because it's more flattering for the subject. Like right now, I have soft light coming from 2 lights that I have bouncing off the wall in front of me. So the light is spreading out and dispersing across the wall. It's very soft. It's not as many shadows. Okay? But if you want to use hard light in a situation where you want to add texture or create drama, perhaps it's a textured, weathered face, like some of the old camel herders that I photographed in India used hard light from the morning sun rising there, and it was very appropriate because it added more drama and texture to the face. So there is no such thing as bad light. You need to know what it is that you want to achieve with your photograph and then use the correct or the most appropriate type of lighting. Okay, so to get back to the myth of I can't do portraits, the lighting is bad. If it's the wrong type of lighting for what you want to do, okay, now what are your choices? So if you're trying to shoot at midday, for example, and the sun is out and you're trying to do a portrait and you want soft light, the easiest thing would be to get into the shade. And I've talked about this before. So what do you do if it's midday and there's very little shade? It's very rare that there will be an occasion where there is no shade. So the first thing you want to do is find something that's producing shade. So a big object like a tree or a building is going to work well. So if you can find a building, get on the north side of it, assuming you're in the northern hemisphere. Sorry, get on the north side because the sun is going to be more to the south, maybe opposite in the southern hemisphere. I don't know, you tell me if you're living down under in Australia or New Zealand somewhere. So get onto the side of the building that's in the shade, and you'll automatically find at least a couple of feet of shade to put your subject in. You can also look for a tree overhang, like a big branch, which will then produce some shade. It also blocks the overhead light. So it's what's called a flag or what's called a gobo in commercial studio lighting, where it blocks the overhead light. So instead of the light coming from overhead and you get dark eyes, the light's coming from the front and the eyes are better lit. Okay, another type of scenario like that is a porch. So if you could find a house or a building that has a porch with an overhang, that is the perfect, ideal place to do portraits. One of my favorite spots that I used to photograph weddings in Edmonton had exactly that type of scenario. And I can photograph there at any time of day because it had this beautiful overhang. Okay. Another neat thing you can look for is a natural reflector. Okay, so you can bring your own reflector and put some light into the person's face, or you can look for a natural reflector. So another scenario might be the perfect location that I have in Edmonton, where I photograph a lot of portraits. The building across the street is about 6 stories tall, and it's white. So the sun shines right on it, and it's like a giant reflector lighting up the people across the street where I'm photographing. It's perfect. So if you could find a scenario in your area like like that, you can do portraits pretty much at any time of day and create the type of lighting that is the most appropriate for the image that you want to achieve, right? If there isn't anything, let's say you're in the middle of a field and there's no trees and there's no buildings, there's no nothing, you're in the middle of the desert or you're in the middle of a golf course, right? Be careful you don't get hit by golf balls. The other thing you can do in those kind of situations is put your subject with the sun behind them, so backlight them. And I've run into this exact scenario myself. Years ago, I was doing a wedding and I had to put the sun behind the people to do the group photos. There was literally nowhere to go. And I used a flash to fill the shadows to light their faces. Okay, so I did use a flash coming from the camera. You can get it off the camera if you're technically inclined to get your flash off camera to light their faces, or use a reflector. Okay, that will give you a much better lighting than if you try and turn them the other way and put the sun in their face. Because what happens when somebody is facing the sun is you get that hard lighting, and then you get their face that looks like this, squinty, right? So you got no eyes. Okay, not a good look for people. Okay, so if you want to practice more of these types of things, if you actually go to portraitfundamentals.com right now, there's the course isn't available yet, but you can actually sign up in the little box and get the free guide on how to do better portrait lighting at midday with all of these tips and examples that I just talked about. So if you head over there and sign up, you'll get notice of the sale starting tomorrow, and you'll get the free PDF regardless of whether you buy the course or not. Okay, let's move on to myth number 2. Myth number 2 is shutter speed affects the flash exposure. So I see this a lot with beginners when they're starting to use flash or incorporating flash with ambient or natural light, and they try and adjust the exposure. So if it's too dark or too light, they want to adjust the shutter speed. Okay, so the only thing that happens is, let me backtrack a little bit and explain first of all how the shutter in your camera works. I'll use my hands. Okay, so imagine that what you're looking at me right now is the shutter. So the shutter doesn't just go like this and open and close. It's actually what's called a leaf shutter, and it sort of goes like this. Okay, and when it's doing a long exposure, you'll actually hear it, right? Kind of goes ka-chunk. When it's doing a really fast exposure, what happens is the shutter, or the first one opens and the second one is closing right behind it. Okay, so if you increase your shutter speed really fast, your shutter will actually close quicker than the flash exposure, and your flash exposure will only expose a part of your scene. So if you've ever had a picture where it's half black or a strip is black, what's happened is you've exceeded the maximum shutter speed or the sync speed for your camera, and you've cut off part of the lighting coming from the flash. So the flash only affects the lighting that is coming in through the aperture, okay? Because the flash is a really short duration, okay? The only thing that you can use to adjust the flash exposure is your aperture, okay? Now, if you adjust the ISO, it's going to raise the whole exposure level, so it's going to affect everything, okay? But if you're talking about a scene where you want to balance the natural light that's already there, for example, in this room, and adding some flash, okay, if you adjust your shutter speed, it's going to affect the room light. If you adjust it faster, you'll have less light in the room. If you adjust it slower, you'll have more light coming from the room. Okay, but your flash exposure is set by the aperture. So I have a little sort of rule to give you. So write this down if you're taking notes. SAAF. So what that stands for is shutter controls the ambient, aperture controls the flash. Okay, it's a little bit of a harder concept to get your head around, and it takes a little bit of practice. Okay, we explained it in a lot more detail in the course, and we give you some examples. But if you're starting to work with flash and you're having inconsistent results, you might need to look at this as to why you're getting those results. Okay. Myth number 3. And I talked about this yesterday or the day before. I forget what day we've done things in now. When we talked about equipment, is I don't need a tripod to do portraits. Okay, so yes, it is possible to do a portrait without a tripod, but is it better? Okay, so it depends on the situation. If I'm doing a photo of a toddler, or I'm doing a street portrait where I'm kind of moving around and doing lots of variations of things, I'm most likely not going to use a tripod because it's not appropriate, or, you know, I simply don't have the time if I'm photographing on the street. But if I'm doing a posed shot where the subject is seated or positioned in one spot and the camera is going to be positioned in another spot and neither of those things are moving, I'm going to use a tripod. Okay. Number one, it's going to give you more stability. So you can use a slightly slower or longer shutter speed and you don't have to worry about camera shake. Okay. So remember that if you are hand holding your camera, you need to have your shutter speed at least as fast as 1 over the focal length of the lens. Okay, so we talked again about equipment and using a longer than normal focal length. So if you're using, say, a 100 millimeter lens and you're hand holding it, you want to make sure that you have at least 1/100th of a second to make sure you're not getting camera shake. Okay, if you have shaky hands, or maybe you're tired, or you drink a lot of coffee, you want to make sure that you compensate for that. So if you know that your hands are shaky, make sure that you compensate and go even faster than that minimum. Okay, so if you put it on a tripod, you can then reduce the shutter speed, and you don't have to worry about the camera shake. Okay. Number two, and I talked about this yesterday with equipment as well, is if you have the camera up to your eye, you can't make eye contact with the person that you're photographing. So they're looking into a lens. You could see them and you could see their eyes, but they can't see yours. So it's a little bit disconcerting for people because they are already nervous. People being photographed, it's kind of like, I forget which number it is, but it's in the top 3 of fears, right up there with public speaking, which I'm doing right now, and public speaking, death, and the dentist. And I think being photographed is somewhere up in that range. People are really afraid of getting photographed. They don't want to look stupid. They don't know what to do with their hands and their feet and so on. And they are looking to you for guidance, right? They're saying, okay, you're the one that's doing the photography. You're the expert or the professional. So they're looking to you to help them. And eye contact really helps them to kind of calm their nerves, talk with them a little bit, talk about the weather, talk about a movie that's current, talk about the Oscar nominations, whatever. Find a common ground and talk to people because that will help them relax. And you can't do that when the camera's up to your eye. Okay. It also forces you to slow down when you're using a tripod, which is never a bad thing. So slow down, get your settings right, get the exposure right, and then you can focus on getting the expressions, building the rapport with the subject, and getting the best images possible for them as well as for you, because you kind of owe it to them, right? If you're doing their portrait, you want to make sure that you get the best images for them, right? And their time. Myth number 4. Okay, people don't want or need posing help. Okay, so I mentioned that, people don't know what to do with their hands and their legs and so on. So again, people are nervous. And at the very minimum, I recommend that you give them some guidance or some direction. Okay, so if you don't want to do structured or what a lot of people might consider stiff poses, people need at least some direction. Okay, so things like go stand by that tree and lean against it with your back, or turn your body a little bit this way. Okay, so you have to be ready and understand basic posing, how to position a body. The general rule is if it bends, bend it, right? If the body is completely stiff and all your joints are locked into position, the person's not going to look very comfortable in their photo and they're not going to look their best, right? They're going to feel and look uncomfortable. So they're not going to be happy with it, neither will you. So if you can learn to help them to relax a little bit by just starting them off with a pose, often what I'll do is I'll demonstrate. If it's a seated pose, I'll do it and then say, okay, you go ahead and do this. I might sit where I want them to sit. So you don't necessarily have to start with, okay, specifically put your arms and your legs and your feet this way, but get them into a position and then let it see how it evolves naturally. Because everybody sits and stands in their own manner. So let them have some of their own personality come out, but get them started, okay? And there's things like posing guides that you can get that will help you with that as well. Okay, number 5. Okay, this is something that I've heard in my classroom and from people that I've tutored in the past where I'm too old to learn this stuff, right? It's too difficult. Okay, so to that, I'm actually just going to say hogwash. Okay, so put a thumbs down if you agree with me on that one. Okay, so if you aren't dead yet, and assuming you're here on the live call and watching this video, then you're not. It's not too late to learn anything. Okay, I believe in lifelong learning. I'm constantly learning either something about photography, something about cameras. Today I learned how to put the little fancy banner at the bottom of my video today. So every day I'm learning something new. I'm figuring out how to make my microphone work properly. Okay, so take your time. Be patient with yourself. I recommend finding a good class. If you're in a city, join a camera club. Camera clubs and, photography groups, meetup.com is another place to find other people, Facebook groups. Find a group of people that are doing the things that you want to do, so like a camera club, and go out and join them. I know some of the camera clubs here in Edmonton have great events. They have different genres, like they'll have a macro group that goes out and practices that, and they have a nighttime group that likes to go out and practice those kinds of things. They've got a portrait group. Okay, so join a group of photographers, whether it be online or actual, in your city, and go out and photograph with them. Okay, so learn from other members, learn from the people who are the teachers and the mentors, but learn from each other as well. Bob is on the call again today, and maybe he can attest to this. When we're on a tour, it's not just the tour leaders that you're going to learn from, it's from each other. Hopefully people are sharing images. We're having a shared experience. In India, we had lots of laughs about things like stepping in cow poop and so on. So you have this shared life experience. And it's great to learn as a group, as opposed to feeling like you're all by yourself in this and struggling. Okay, so I would definitely recommend find a good teacher. If you connect with the way that I teach and you read some of my articles, great, come and join my class. If you have a partner or a friend that does photography, sign up for a class with your buddy and do it together, right? So then if there's practice exercises like we have in our course, you can go out and do them together, review your images together, and see how you're doing together, right? To me, everything works better with a friend. That's why we love to travel in groups. A lot of people that come on our tours come because their partner doesn't like to travel, but they don't want to go alone. So find a way to participate and do the learning process with somebody that is a buddy, right? Okay, so I promised to tell you a little bit about the Portrait Fundamentals course. Let me see if I can get this to work. So tomorrow at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, that's Edmonton time if you're listening from Edmonton, or it's 10 a.m. Eastern Time if you're on that time zone, our course doors will open. The doors will only be open for a week. The course itself is 25 video lessons pre-recorded. You can watch them anytime on any device, and you have lifetime access, as well as you will have access to a Facebook group. So the peers that I just talked about, where you could share and learn together. Right? If you head over to portraitfundamentals.com, you'll see the timer, like you see the timer somewhere over my head, right about there, right? Click ticking down, and that's when the doors will open. And when the doors open, we will have early bird pricing, and you'll be able to save up to 25% when you buy the course during the early bird pricing. So if you're interested in that, please make sure that you get in early. We also have a VIP option this year, which is brand new. And the VIP option, there's only 30 seats available. It's a little bit more expensive, but you get access to myself and Bruce, the other instructor. We will have a private Facebook group where we will answer your questions directly. We will give you feedback on your images, and we'll have 3 live group coaching calls where we can look at your images as a group. We can do live Q&A and get all your questions answered over the next 6 weeks. So we'll really want to set you up for success and help you to move forward and get where you want to be with your portrait photography. Right? Does anybody have any questions about those 5 myths that we just covered today? If you have a question, please pop it in the chat. If you're watching the replay later, I will make sure and check back and look for any questions and try and get to those as well. Okay, tomorrow I have a longer presentation for you. Tomorrow is going to be about an hour-long webinar of 10 portrait mistakes and why you want to avoid them and how. So I'm going to tell you what the mistakes are that I see a lot of people making, and then we're going to tell you how to not make those mistakes. So there's going to be a lot of value tomorrow. We're going to make sure that's recorded, and it will be posted on the website as well. So if you're not on Facebook or you have friends that are not on Facebook, they will be able to see it as well. So thanks again for joining today. Again, if you have any questions about what I've just talked about, please pop them into the chat, in the comments, and I will answer as quickly as possible. Take care and hope to see you again tomorrow.